Good morning, everybody. It is our last 3 days in Canada. Can't believe it, it's all coming to an end. So this morning we actually got to sleep in and had like a lazy morning. We took our time packing and chatted with Nancy, our hostess, for most of the morning. She's honestly the sweetest lady ever, and she's been such a beautiful hostess for us as we've stayed here at Cape Breton the last couple of days. We set off back to Halifax around 11 a.m. It was super overcast today and very, very foggy and rainy during some parts of the drive too. I'm so glad we got in our hikes yesterday. The weather was picturesque and couldn't have been better. We wanted to stop over at a couple of must-see spots just out of Halifax that our hostel friends recommended, and since the drive was only 4 hours, it would be a great way to bulk out the day and do some sightseeing still. We stopped first at Peggy's Cove. This cove is only 50 minutes south of Halifax. It's a popular tourist destination and it's such a cute little fishing town. The houses are so colourful and there's a beautiful white lighthouse that everyone comes to see and attracts a lot of photographers. In the restaurant there were some incredible photography artworks hanging up of the lighthouse people had taken at different times of day, sunrise and sunset, and in all kinds of different weather conditions. The town is quite small and it was super foggy today, but thank goodness there was still enough visibility to see the lighthouse and a bit out to sea as well. It was quite chilly, but honestly Ness and I are so conditioned to the cold now. We were just wearing shorts while everyone else was rugged up to the nine in hoodies, trackies and beanies, of course. We went to the restaurant on the seaside there, right near the lighthouse. It serves coffee and hot drinks, so Ness and I jumped at the opportunity to warm up a little bit. Ness ordered a coffee, and of course I ordered a hot chocolate. I'm still not the biggest fan of coffee here in Canada. Ness is definitely more acquainted with Canada's drip coffee, so she's been enjoying it with some cream. You can see she's loaded up her coffee there. She had all the cream that they offered. It was so funny. And I had a bajillion marshmallows in mine, which I loved. We also stopped 5 minutes down the road and checked out Polly's Cove, which is a little bit lesser known. It's right next to Peggy's Cove, like I said, about a 5-minute drive away. We did have to walk a little bit of a trail and came to this beautiful overlook out across the water and the cove. It was so gorgeous and the water was so blue, and it was very private too. Because not many people know about this cove, we were so lucky to get a chance to see it, and it was so untouched. Our friend from Charlottetown Hostel actually recommended for us to go see it. That's the only reason we knew about it. We could actually see Peggy's Cove too from where we were sitting in the distance. We could see the lighthouse. We arrived in Halifax in the late evening. Honestly, we were stuck in traffic for 45 minutes standstill, and if we just walked, we were 2 minutes away. So Ness and I were definitely over driving by this point, and we're definitely happy to check in and relax the rest of the evening. And that's all we did today. The following day we wanted to check out Hopewell Rocks, but unfortunately it was a 4-hour drive away and I wasn't feeling up to driving 8 hours. Plus we wanted to see the Flower Pot Rocks in low tide, which meant we'd have to have left at like 4:30 a.m. and that was not on the cards for us. So the staff of the hostel said we would be able to see the rocks if we went to Halls Harbour, which was about an hour and a half drive away. So off we went. However, when we got there, we couldn't see the rock formations at all. So we asked some of the locals and they pointed across the Bay of Fundy. By the way, the bay is enormous, and I'm telling you, when we looked over towards Hopewell Rocks, they're like these tiny minute formations in the distance. So I mean, we saw them, but we also couldn't really see them at the same time. We were a little bit disappointed as we'd hoped to be able to walk along the sandbank amongst these incredible rock formations, but it was not meant to be. We did get to enjoy the beautiful bay, however, and experience the Bay of Fundy at low tide. The bay is very famous because at low tide it recedes around 33 meters back, which is extremely far considering high tide is super high. It fills up this channel in Halls Harbour where they keep the boats, so it's very rare to come across a place like this anywhere around the world. Plus the bay is absolutely massive, like I said, it's just huge. We didn't realise how big it was until we actually stood there looking at it. After checking out the Bay of Fundy, we headed back to Halifax to check out a cafe that was recommended by the staff at the hostel for its coffee. This really intrigued us because coffee here in Canada hasn't been a favourite. And considering that they recommended it for the coffee, we were very curious. And wow, this place blew our minds. The coffee was the best we've had anywhere around Canada, and the pastries were incredible. The croissant was the best I've ever had, and that's saying something, guys. I'm a big bakery girl. And the coffee was actually good. This place so reminded me of home. I really missed home at this point. It definitely had the cafe culture we have back home in Oz, and Dartmouth, which is where the cafe was located, was such a gorgeous area. The streets were so pretty and it had such a nice feel to the place. We really enjoyed our stop at this cafe and honestly can't recommend enough to those visiting Halifax. Definitely check it out if you get the chance. After our cafe stop, Ness and I wanted to check out the local library. We'd been told it was really beautiful. So we walked to the Central Library in the town centre. It was a lovely walk through the city and the library lived up to the expectation. Guys, it was huge. Inside looked even bigger as well. Ness looked for a book in the series she was reading at the moment, and I found a cozy spot to just sit and read and relax. I'm currently reading The Adrenal Reset, and guys, I'm absolutely loving it. We stayed for a couple of hours, then headed back to the hostel to cook our last meal in Canada. It was a rainy afternoon, so we actually didn't get the chance to watch the sunset that we'd hoped to do on our last evening here in Halifax, but we had a lot of sorting and packing to do, and I also caught up on some laptop work. Oh, it's our last day. Oh my God. We woke up to a beautiful morning here in Halifax. I'd set the alarm, well, I thought I'd set the alarm early enough, but clearly had not. I've never been so stressed before in my life than Ness and I were this morning. We hadn't accounted for the fact that we had to fill up and return the hire car this morning. So we realised we'd only had 15 minutes when we got to the airport to fill up the car, return it, and check in for our flight before the cut-off time. Needless to say, we were stressed was an understatement. But by God's grace, somehow we made it with 4 minutes to spare. I don't know how, but thank goodness. Honestly, I'm relieving the stress just thinking about it now. The flight to Vancouver was smooth, and I even got a celebration cookie on the flight. I'm obsessed with this brand of cookies. They're my favourite. We landed smoothly in Vancouver and hired a car for the day. It was a gorgeous day in Vancouver, so we had planned, if the weather permitted it, to finish off our trip with a bang and do one more hike before we flew out this evening. We had 11 hours to spare, so we might as well make the most of it. One of our friends from the Charlottetown Hostel was from Vancouver, and she recommended that we do the St. Mark's Summit hike. But we couldn't find the trailhead to hike. Plus, we didn't have any data as our SIM cards had run out by this point. We ended up having to pull into a community centre along the Sea to Sky Highway. They were honestly the most beautiful, helpful, kind Canadians I've ever met, or just people in general. They're so beautiful. I love Canadians. Everyone we've asked has helped us so beautifully, and they go above and beyond. They actually recommended we do the Tunnel Bluffs trail hike. We hadn't heard of this hike before, and they told us it was a great one to do, and it was only about a 3-hour hike return, so that fitted perfectly into our schedule. They showed us the way up to climb the trailhead, and we began the climb. It was a warm day, but had a beautiful cool breeze, so it was really pleasant to climb. However, the first 2 kilometers were all uphill. And when I say all uphill, I mean it was super steep. So we definitely worked up quite a sweat quickly. It was so great to be able to stretch our legs after the 7.5-hour flight this morning. And we had 2 flights this evening, adding up to another 14 hours of flying. So a hike was much needed. The hike itself was 5.5 kilometers all up. We had no idea what the view would be or how long the hike was. We hadn't been able to look up the details, but I kind of loved that. It was going to be a surprise. We just were told that the view was stunning and it was only a 3-hour return hike, so that fitted into our schedule perfectly, so we took the chance and went with it. We actually ended up hiking the trail even faster than what they said it would take. We did it in 2.5 hours, and we were pretty proud of ourselves, just saying. We were able to stay and enjoy the view for a while at the top as well. The view was something else. Oh my goodness, it was so breathtaking. We could see all the way down to the Sea to Sky Highway and to Vancouver Island, which was amazing. The views were so picturesque and the water was so blue. The sunset would have been amazing from up here. There were a fair few flies we had to keep swatting away, but that was really nothing compared to the views we were experiencing. Canada really delivered the goods for us on our last day. It was such a perfect way to end our trip here. We drove back to Vancouver Airport and checked in. Ness and I grabbed a Starbucks, which is now a tradition that we do every time we fly out from an airport back home, anytime we've been traveling since we were 18 years old. So we're continuing that tradition today. And we found it so funny what our names were put on the orders. Ness got a strawberries and cream Starbucks, and I got a matcha frappe with oat milk. Oh, it was so good. For the long haul flight home, I was so stoked. I got a free seat next to me, which of course means I get to spread. 14 hours later, we arrived back in Sydney. It was so nice to be home. It's crazy how the thing you miss the most, I swear, after traveling for a long period of time is your bed. And that's all for today's vlog, guys. I hope you enjoyed these travel vlogs and stay tuned for my upcoming videos. Bye.